morning, darlings, and welcome to the Vuyo Joboda show. Listen, we asked you for a name in the past couple of weeks, and now you guys helped us decide this name. We've decided to call the show the Vuyo Joboda show because, hey, we're sitting with you, darling Vuyo Joboda. And on the show today, I'm joined by one of South Africa's most influential men in the country, and also he is a Forbes 30 under 30. 2019 contestant or participant. He's also worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. Listen, if you don't know who I'm talking about, then sit back, relax, and let's enjoy the next 30 minutes with the one and only Joe Human. Hello.
Hey.
Hey there.
How you doing?
I'm good.
I'm all
Listen,
right.
we had to make sure that you come and sit down with us. You've come from across the country just to sit here on the show with us. But thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I said your name is Joe Human, but I'm sure that's not really your name.
Yeah, look, everyone always asks me, where does the human part come from?
Yeah.
You know, and it's a very interesting story. So what happened is I actually started a product, right, that was called Joe Human. And the reason why I conceptualized the product was because I come from a very strong Christian background, right? And growing up in the church, like, you're conditioned to perceive non-believers as people that you shouldn't associate with. And as a creative, I get into the industry and I meet all types of people, right? And I connect with them on different levels because I like what they're doing. I love the value that they add into my life. And I realized that, look, before color, race, sexual orientation, we really just all human beings, right? And I wanted to bring that essence into my product. And I was working with cork. So the reason why I chose cork was because it's got different textures. So every sheet of cork on my product was going to be different. So that speaks to you. You're still a human being, but you've got your own special character, your own unique style. And I wanted that product to really just communicate to the human being before it communicates to anyone else. So when that did not happen, because the startup capital was crazy, I did punt it out on social media and everyone was going crazy about it. And after I stopped, everyone just kept calling me Joe Human. And I was like, okay, you know what, maybe I am the brand, and I could develop it into really anything. You know, it could be a cologne, it could be an agency, but I ran with it.
Yeah, it's very catchy. I mean, I can't imagine you being called anything else but just Joe Human. But you mentioned a bit about your childhood and how you grew up. Paint us the world of little Joe. And how that was. How was your upbringing? Because I mean, for us to understand how you have come to where you are today, we kind of, if you paint us a picture of where you come from, we get an idea and an understanding. So paint it for us.
Yeah, look, I come from very humble beginnings. My dad was a pharmacist for the president back in the Congo. I'm Congolese, and he used to heal people with medicine, right? Before he got a calling, where God told him, look, you're not going to heal my people with medicine, but with my word. And he completely switched careers and stuff. And I remember when the president was assassinated, my own country was not actually safe for me to live in because everyone that was associated with the president was sort of targeted. So we moved to Zambia for like a year and stuff. My dad left. I'm going to speak a lot about my dad because he's such a huge inspiration to me. He's literally been one of the biggest influences in my life to get me where I am today. So yeah, he moved down to Cape Town, actually settled Cape Town. He was working as a security guard and just like saving up money to bring us over. But before that happened, he moved to Joburg. And when we came over, we had no place to stay. We had no friends. We stayed in a shelter in like a one room, about 8 of us. My dad didn't have a job at the time. So what he would do is he would leave early in the morning, say 4 or 5 in the morning, go to town, and he'd pick up like anything that the street vendors might have dropped the day earlier. And that was our grocery, right? And he then later started networking and meeting quite a few people, which then helped him to get into actually establishing a ministry and us finding ourselves on our feet again. managed to take, so I come from a family of 4, I'm the eldest, managed to take us through school, and when I got into my tertiary education, which was at MGI, 3 months later, I got a call from home, and my parents literally told me on the phone, "Look, dude, we can't afford your fees anymore.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to drop out, right?" And I remember how frightening that was for me, because in my head, we were conditioned to think, look, you have to go through primary, high school, tertiary, get a job, work for a corporate, right? Entrepreneurship was something that we never spoke about, right? It was not conversations that were in our circles at the time. So I remember how shattering that was for me, because I always knew that I wanted to be in the creative space, and I needed to get a degree to achieve that, right? And when that was sort of like shut off, I was completely lost. Like, what am I going to do with myself? I remember going back home, and he told me how much he failed me because he couldn't send me through school. And I told him, look, I think you've done a pretty good job, and I'm going to take it from here. The very next day, I got up, went to a place called Gandhi Square in town, and I sat there and I just cried. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had my art file with me, and I was hopeless. So I decided to go back home. On my way there, this guy across the road sees me and he screams, "Hey, graphic designer." And in my head, I'm like, well, I am one, but I'm not. Reason being, throughout my high school, I was such a curious person. So I was really playing with Photoshop. I was playing with design softwares. I was looking up other designers around the country and the world and what they were doing. And I was trying to mimic that. So I had some skill, right? So he calls me over. He's like, look, can I see your work? I'm like, cool. He goes through my stuff. He's like, I really like what you're doing. I run a small retail store. I need help. I mean, you're a young person. You probably understand this Facebook and digital stuff. So he's like, come through on Monday. And we met. He told me what was the scope and the brief. And that's how I literally got my first job.
Just from the side of the road.
From the side of the, literally, right? And started the Facebook page on 25 likes. When we resigned, me and my now business partner, because he was hired like a year later, also as a senior designer, we left the page on 15,000 likes, right? All we were doing is taking photos of like the clients who would come in with specific orders and stuff like that, put it on social media, add graphics, and we would sell that off Facebook. So throughout that process, we met quite a lot of people, and 3 people stood out and within different conversations told us, you guys are sitting on so much gold. You could literally be doing what you're doing now for yourselves and having clients like this pay you for your craft. And that's where Creative Mindspace started. We did a lot of research and realized, look, we don't have an agency that owns our narrative. A lot of people come into our country and they experience what we have, and they go out and they write different narratives about it, right? A brand like Gucci or Louis Vuitton would take the Ndebele print or the Xhosa print and make a beautiful garment out of it, and we go crazy. But it's something that we experience on a day-to-day, right? It's here. So we then decided to build an agency that understood the African narrative, an agency that would take our people, our color, our food, our weather, our different languages and diversity, and pump it into the beautiful brands that we build.
So Joe, I mean, you were speaking about your agency now, and your title is brand identity developer. When I'm thinking about that, I'm just thinking, what does that entail?
I'm very passionate about brands, how they communicate, how they behave, how they are perceived in the market. And one of my passions is building that, is building a persona for the brand. So even just going back to my name, Joe Human, I'm really focused on how human beings respond to communication, how they respond to design, how they respond to brands, right? And my role and my focus is exactly that, to be able to understand how does this brand communicate in the market, because this word brand gets thrown around so many times, right? And people don't really understand it. Your brand is not your logo or a beautiful poster or your website, right? Your brand is how you welcome me into the room, you know, how you answer your phone. Your brand is every single touch point and the experience that I get after interacting with you. That is your brand, right? And we as human beings have that because we have personas and we have attitude and we have unique characters. But then how do we take that and pump it into a brand so that when the market connects with your brand, they can feel something? Because emotions drive purchasing decisions. That's just how it works, right?
So you understand the mind of the consumers or the people who are receiving the
Yes,
brand.
and how to make them connect to the brand, how to make the brand become a human being. Yes.
Yes. And where did you understand that? Where did you learn how to make the brand? Is it your creative instinct or is it personal experiences that you've come across? How do you understand?
I think it's a bit of both because throughout getting to where I am right now, you learn things like color psychology, right? What color makes you feel what way, how it influences you. And the more you get into stuff like that and you actually start focusing on the people that respond to the product and not the actual product or the service, you start understanding, okay, cool, how do we tailor brands to communicate to those different touch points, right? So it's really all about the user experience and the journey. When you shift your mind from focusing away from your product or service and you focus on the people that actually want to receive it, I think that's where you actually start winning, because the stuff that we put out, the work that we put out is not for us, right? You might love a specific logo, but it doesn't work for your market. That's not what your market wants, right? So you always have to sort of tailor make whatever you execute for your market. So I think for me, that's where I sort of started understanding that it's about the human being. It's about the audience. It's about the people. And once you focus on that, irrespective of what you put out, people will always relate to it.
I think I'm learning so much, guys. I'm literally taking in everything you're saying and trying to understand just the concept of branding, you know. And as you said, people throw around this word a lot, and one tends to misunderstand what is a brand. And if you can unpack it for us on exactly if we're saying this is a brand, what are some of the things that you can say to be a brand? This is what you have to be.
So everything I speak about has to do with purpose, right? I think one of the biggest things within a brand is your purpose. You need to know who you are, what you want to do, what sort of value you're adding, right? What path you're on. I find it very weird if you are doing something and you're not able to question why you're doing it. I think for me, that's a bit like scary. So purpose is the biggest thing when it comes to a brand. You have to know your identity.
Okay.
Right? You need to know why you're doing what you're doing, and how to create value from that. Second thing, I think with a brand is your messaging.
Okay.
You need to be very particular with who you want to communicate, right? I always tell a lot of my clients when they are coming up with a product or a service and they're like, but we want this market. And I'm like, but your product or your service is not specific to this market, right? And you always need to, we need to accept that we can't be for everyone and everyone can't be for us, right? It's really just about being able to tailor make a niche audience for yourself, right? And live with that audience and build a community out of that, because that becomes, those become return clients, right? And you can live off that, and that's your market. So I think messaging is very important. Apple, Android or Samsung don't speak to the same market, right? You'll find people that love Nike, people that love Puma. Why? Because of their messaging, right? Because they're putting out content and advertising messaging that you relate to, that touches you based on your experience, based on what you feel, based on your background, based on your preference. So messaging is very important when it comes to building a brand
Yeah.
and just understanding your audience.
Listen, Joe, you're giving. I think this feels like a masterclass now because
I actually feel like we are in a masterclass.
But I think let's just go to a quick commercial break and so that we can take it all in, right,
Cool.
guys? Let's take all that in and come back after this commercial ad break. And after the break, we're going to be hearing more about how did Joe get into the Forbes 30 under 30 list. All right, we'll see you straight after this. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Vuyo show right here on Bricks TV. I hope that you're on social media so that you can follow us on Bricks TV and share with us your thoughts on what you think on today's show. Listen, we're having a masterclass from the brand identity developer himself, Joe Human. And I hope that you're sitting at home and taking down those notes because this is where you're going to learn on how to build the best brand. And we're about to ask him the very hard question right now, which is, drumroll please. Forbes 30 under 30. Joe, how did you get yourself on Africa's Forbes 30 under 30 list?
Wow, that is a hard question. I think I've been very smart with how I've positioned myself on digital platforms, specifically Twitter. I remember the journey for me really started when I understood how to use the actual platform, which was last year, December, and I've been on Twitter since 2012, right? But I think it started when I put out the first thread about how to build a brand.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, ever since my time on Twitter, I always told myself, you know what, one day I'm going to tweet something so smart that's going to get like 1,000 retweets and everyone's going to be like jumping on it. One day. And I always used to get like a lot of requests from Instagram DMs like, hey, help me with my brand. How do I do this and this and this? And sort of separating your energy within 10, 15 people asking almost the same question was quite difficult. So I said, look, let me go to a platform where I can actually be vocal and opinionated about topics. And I used Twitter and I put out that thread and it went crazy. I remember my phone did not switch off notifications for like a week.
Yeah.
This was literally just buzzing. I had to mute that tweet because a lot of people were engaging with it. And that's when I sort of picked out that, look, I think people are hungry for value, right? They're hungry for insight, they're hungry for information. And that's sort of where I started positioning myself as a thought leader in the branding space. So I broke down what a brand is and all the different touch points. I would give different threads on how to actually personify your brand, what colors work, how logos work, intellectual property, so many things. I think to date I've got about 10 different threads. And I think that's sort of where Forbes picked me up because I remember I got an email saying, you're nominated for the Forbes under 30 list. And I was like, what, me? Really? I was not sure.
Yeah.
And it's quite an interesting process because you think people just get onto that list because they're cool, but they had to go through like our financial statements for the last 3 years because to be on that list, your business has to be in the space of potentially making 200 million in the next 5 years.
Okay.
And also you're able to be on the Forbes cover, you've got the potential to. And for the creative category, you had to have that, you had to have some sort of social impact and influence and stuff like that. And I think that's how I got onto the list. It's really just about being able to add value into your community, being able to add value into whatever it is that you are working with and executing, and really just being out there. Because if you're doing all these cool things and you're creating solutions for brands and people, but you're not putting yourself out there on social media and being able to speak about it and showcase your work, no one's going to come knocking at your door.
And that knock came and you were like, come in, Forbes. Come in, Africa, Forbes.
No, definitely.
I can imagine how you probably were feeling because this is an African platform that's recognized all over the world, right?
I was very nervous and scared because as much as it's a great title and a great list to be on, it also adds a lot of pressure because you need to now uphold that standard, right? You need to live up to that with your brand, with your business, everything that you put out. I always tell people that I love iterating, right? I'm only as good as my last job. right? I'm only as good as my last interview, my last website. So my next job needs to be better than that. I always need to top that. I'm in competition with myself, all the time. So being on that list really put me in that perspective to say, look, now from here on, you need to grow, you need to do better, you need to execute better.
And you're doing exactly that. I mean,
Thank you.
You've worked with some of the biggest brands and some of the biggest names in the country. And I think social media also plays a very big role in how you go about putting your brand out there and sharing more about this brand concept that you're very much big on. What does social media mean to you, and how has it played an impact in your life?
Look, I think we're all on social media for different reasons. Not to say that everyone should use social media to make money, but I think for me, I've seen it as an opportunity to not only monetize, but to start building assets, right? To start building properties, especially. So next year, I'm going to change how conferencing is made. I'm going to put brand managers, digital creators, amazing contributors into one space and just create access for the public to have people like that and have one-on-one conversations with them, because we have a lot of talks and conferences where you come into a room, you sit down, there's people on the panel, they talk about topics from a very shallow perspective, and you walk out and you can't take that into your business because it wasn't practical. You're right. It wasn't really insightful. So I want to change how that works. So social media has actually helped me and given me the tools to actually do that and to build a brand, also to be noticed by other brands, right? Who want to partner with you and say, hey, look, this person is actually valuable. They can help us position our brands like this and that. Let's collaborate with them and partner with them. So it plays a really big role. It's one of the avenues that I've been able to monetize.
Yeah, and you were saying something about how you put 10 threads on like a Twitter, and I'm thinking, why doesn't Joe just put a book out and just put all of that in a book?
Everyone is asking me about a book.
So maybe that's something that's something that could be, could pop in 2020.
Yeah, no, definitely. But also for me, I do things when they feel right.
Yeah.
I'm all about seasons. I hate prematurely executing things. So when I start something, I started a guide earlier this year, but I didn't put it out because I just felt like it wasn't the right time, right? It needed, also I'm a perfectionist. So I'll start something, it's not good enough, go back and keep making it better. But yeah, a book is definitely on the cards, not next year, I don't know when, but when it's out, it's going to be out.
Because you're the marketing and the brand genius of Africa right now, so we need to get those gems somewhere prescribed for us to kind of keep going back to. But what else can we expect from Joe in the year 2020 or beyond?
Look, like I said earlier, it's really just about building properties and building assets, because I always have this conversation with my other influential friends, and I say, look, you can't rely on brands to always give you deals. Or to say, hey, can you post this for us? And that it's passive income, which is great, but it's actually not sustainable. I'm actually lucky to have signed with one of my brands for a year, right? Which makes more sense. And I would want more deals like that. But it's about converting your influence and the value that you can offer into things that can live on their own and not be dependent on brands. Rather create things that brands want to actually jump in on and say, hey, we actually like this event, we like the show, and that's really what I'm trying to do with my brand. That's what I do with my podcast, and that's what I'm going to be doing with the other things that I'm going to be building next year.
Yeah. Oh man, guys, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what it is that you're gonna, and obviously building more brands and helping more brands kind of come to life and come alive. Yeah. What are some of the brands that you can just give us just a couple, so we can be like, oh, okay, all right, we see.
Okay, so we're very passionate about African brands. So we've been blessed to work with brands like Tepo the Jean Maker,
which was on the show last week.
Cool. We designed illustrations for Skin for Socks for about 3 years. There's a platform called I'm African, which really just houses all types of creatives work on there, and you can purchase from them and stuff like that. It's owned by Tumisho Masha and his brother, and we've also worked with brands like Cadbury Lunch Bar, Heineken, Capitec, Pizza Vino.
Yeah.
So we've had a very interesting mix of different brands, but our main focus has really just been African brands, how they communicate, making them look luxurious to the global markets and the local markets.
Listen, Joe, we're so excited. I'm excited to see what it is that you're about to do within the African space and the global space at large, because what you're doing at the moment is really good. It's really amazing. But thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having
me. We'll be on the lookout, guys. He is at Joe Human across all social media platforms. We are at Bricks TV across all social media platforms. But it's time for us to say goodbye to you till next week. Same time, same place here on Bricks TV. This is the Vuyo Joboda show with Vuyo Joboda. It's good night and God bless. See you next week.